Hello and welcome, good gentles all. My name is Mica Pointer. I am a graduate employee in the costume shop of the University of Oregon, and today I'm going to be working with you on putting 4 whole buttons into your project. So, as the name implies, 4 whole buttons are buttons with 4 holes that you can stitch through to secure it. There are also 2 hole buttons, which, again, aptly named, has only 2 holes to stitch through. And there are also some buttons that are called shanked buttons. Now, those aren't buttons that you are going to stab with a sharp implement, but if you notice, here is an example of a shanked button, and you see there's this kind of sticky outy bit right here. That is the shank, and that just helps the button to stand up from the project, so it allows room for the fabric it's getting buttoned into to move about, so that way it's not pinching that fabric down. It has a little bit of room for it to fit down into. Okay, so we will be adding a shank to our buttons in how we wrap the thread around it once we get the project started, but for where we're going to be putting our buttons. If you've been working with us from our previous videos or working as part of the class, this will be attached just on the right side of the fabric, just on the rolled over hem part of our sampler here. And which half of the project you're going to be putting your button, whether it's going to be overlapping left over right or right over left, really depends on what you're making and who you're making it for. Most gentlemen's shirts overlap left over right, whereas most women's shirts are right over left. The reason behind that, I've been told, is that way back in ye olde days when men would defend their honor, of course, with fights to the death and duels and whatnot, if their doublet started getting undone, they would be able to do it back up with their left hand if it was buttoned left over right, while they could keep fighting with their right hand. Whether that's true or no, I have no idea, but it's a fun story. So either way, we're going to be putting this button just on the same side as our female snaps and our bars for previous projects. So that way, just like with the other ones here, it would overlap just like that, imagining that there is a buttonhole right here. All right. So for securing it, we'll be using a needle that has been double threaded and knotted at one end. And because we're anticipating that there's going to be a shank that we're going to be making out of thread going on this side, we'll need a little bit of extra room for it to stand up as we're stitching through the holes right there. So I have a handy little toothpick. You can also use some safety pins just to create a little bit of space as you're doing your stitches around on top here. And there are 2 schools as far as stitches go. Now, one can either do your buttons stitching them crosswise like this, or you can also do them stitching them parallel like this. Now, there are merits to both of them. The good thing about stitching crosswise like this is that it gives you extra surface contact, so that way it's a good strong stitch that you have right there to keep your button secure. What I have also heard is that the extra abrasion of the threads rubbing against each other causes them to break down a lot easier, so that is why the parallel stitching is another good option. What I have been taught is to go with the parallel stitching, so that's what I'm going to use for this project here. But there again, it's personal preference. Whichever kind of look you're going for is what you're going to use. So whichever you prefer, crosswise or parallel stitching, whatever works best for you. But either way, I'm going to make sure that where I'm stitching is kind of centered or at least on the fold. So I'm going through all layers. So I'm keeping it extra strong and secure by doing that. I'm going to take my thread and go through right here. And I'm going to take my spacing implement and just put that across here. So that way I can just stitch down right there. Okay, and I'm going to go over, so I'm coming up in this hole right here. So that way it should look parallel for all your stitches, both on the front and on the back. Let me see. No, wrong hole. Right hole. Okay. Except it's very crooked right here. Not that it matters necessarily, but here we are. And once again, you're going to want to take 5 stitches through each of these. So it'll be 5 over here and 5 over here. So this is my second round of my first stitch. Okay, whoops. Yes, and you can see that sometimes if your threads get a little shifted around, one gets pulled out longer on this side and shorter on that side, it can cause some problems for you right here. But that's why you're always checking and seeing what things are doing on one side and the other. And if there is a knot that starts to develop, you can just start to ease that out right as it's being caused. So let's see if this helps get things going a little better. Okay. Easing that down and in. Okay. And let's find which of these is a little less tension. Okay, that's not it. Oh, there it is. Okay. Pulling those taut and just kind of easing the extra towards the eye of the needle so that way we can get them even again. So you see how one was way longer and one's way shorter? So this way you can keep them both nice and even. Okay, so there's that. And we're going to be going in right here, so that should be coming back up right there where we had began. Okay, so this is going to begin round 2 of the stitches. Going in. Excellent, making sure it's not getting wrapped around itself. Awkward, unfortunately. In. There we go, making sure they're even. You can see there it's a little bit uneven, so I'm going to pull that just to see which thread it is that's not getting the tension. Okay, and we can pull that through. There we go. Pulling again from the needle so we can get those evened out, and jumping over here to begin round 3. Okay. There's 3A. Jumping over. That's good. Here's 3B. Oops, a little crooked. That's better. And we're going to begin round 4. And 4B. Yep, that's good. Excellent, and this is our final round of stitches. And because we doubled our thread, that means we have a sum total of 10 threads that per pair of holes that are holding this button together. Okay, so now with that last stitch, we are ready to put our shank in. So for that, I'm going to pull our spacing implement out. So that way, you see how there's that little bit of extra room between the button and the fabric? So I'm going to put my needle so it's coming just in between the button and the fabric right here. Okay. And now what I'm going to do, maintaining that little bit of space, I'm going to take that thread and start wrapping it around the stitches between the button and the fabric, about 5 or so times. So I'm just going to give it a couple more. And now I'll be able to put it back to the wrong side of the fabric, nice and easy, and tie it off. Being careful that it's not too loose. The shank that we had just made. There we are. Okay. Yes, yes, yes. So you can see that's the wrap. That makes the shank that we had put in. And I'll take just a little anchor stitch, just a quick in and out. Pulling it so it makes a loop, going once, twice through the loop, pulling it taut, and giving it a quick trim with our trusty snips. And there you have it. That is our 4-hole button with shank. Thank you so much for joining me for this. I hope it was instructive and useful to you. If you have any questions or need clarification on anything, my email is on the University of Oregon website under Graduate Students for Theater Arts. Thank you again for joining me, and I wish you happy sewing.